Okay, we're live. Hey, here we go. This is stupid. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Disrupt the Chaos. Excited that we're going on this journey together. So I went through this incredible conference this weekend called Through the Portal. It was great for folks to be together, young, old, intergenerational world, United States. And I also really felt deeply that people there are really critically thinking about solutions to our current issues, not only here or throughout the world. And I want to remind anybody there'll be a special edition of Disrupt the Chaos tomorrow at 7, where I will be interviewing the Green Party candidates, Dr. Jill Stein and Butch Ware. So I'm going to bring on my comrade, and we're just going to have a conversation about Cooperation Jackson. But I also want to talk about what's happening in Lebanon. And anytime I want to understand the international ramifications that's happening, I always bring on my comrade. And also to all of those in Florida, I mean, this hurricane is huge, it's going to hit the whole state. And I hope all our family and friends will be safe throughout the hurricane. Kali Akuno is a co-founder and co-director of Cooperation Jackson. Kali served as the Director of Special Projects and External Funding in the mayoral administration of the late Chokwe Lumumba of Jackson, Mississippi. His focus in this role was supporting cooperative development, the introduction of eco-friendly and carbon reduction methods of operation, and the promotion of human rights and international relations for the city. Kali also served as the co-director of the United States Human Rights Network, the executive director of the People's Hurricane Relief Fund based in New Orleans, Louisiana after Hurricane Katrina, and was a co-founder of the School of Social Justice and Community Development, a public school serving the academic needs of low-income African American Latino communities in Oakland, California. So, Kali, thanks for being with us tonight. For
For
people
sure.
who've never heard of Cooperation Jackson, what is Cooperation Jackson?
Well, pleasure to be here. For everybody who's listening, thank you for joining. This is a new process and project that we're taking on, and definitely looking forward to ongoing work with my comrade Rosa. So definitely, tune in to get to
And
cooperation.
wait 1 second, because it's my bad. This show is sponsored by Cooperation Jackson and also with other support from B Day, the organization to stop violence against women. So Tuesdays and Thursdays, and but tomorrow's a special edition. So you'll see us tonight, tomorrow, and also on Thursday.
So tune in.
Yeah.
So Cooperation Jackson is a network of worker-owned cooperatives and solidarity supporting institutions like the Fannie Lou Hamer Community Land Trust, based in Eversville, also known as Jackson, Mississippi. We are 10 years young, and I stress the young, because one of the things that we have learned in the course of this decade is how long it takes to develop the skill and capacity to do this type of work effectively and in a transformational way. The work is ongoing. The struggle to democratize our relationships and methods of production is an ongoing struggle. Um, but we are 10 years in it, making some pretty significant strides, but we have a long, long way to go to get where we're trying to go. And for folks to know, and understand, Cooperation Jackson is what we describe as an instrument, right, of the Jackson Kush plan. And that is a plan which, first and foremost, is trying to create a liberated zone in Jackson, Mississippi, and in the broader Kush. And for those of you who are not familiar with Kush, Kush comes from an ancient Nile based civilization in East Africa and what would presently be the Sudan. But this Kush region, the way we are describing it now, describes a number of counties in Arkansas, Tennessee, Louisiana, and the vast majority of them being in Mississippi, which straddle the Mississippi River, which constitute the core area of the black belt of those four states, which is named not only for the richness of the soil, where cotton and sugar cane were king during the era of chattel slavery, but where there constitutes a new African majority. And for those who are not familiar with that term, that is a term that those of us who are pushing for not only self determination, but political independence and sovereignty from the U.S. settler colonial state, which is what it is. And we can talk about that more. What we are pushing for throughout the deep South states of Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and South Carolina. So we are a component of this overall movement, striving for self determination, sovereignty, and a socialist transition. And we are just trying to play our particular part, which is developing the productive forces and democratizing those forces and put them directly in the hands of Black working class people, to transform our lives and build an autonomous economic base from which we can work from and have resources to leverage, for our own political campaigns and our own transformative work in our community. So that's us in summary.
Yes, and I, want folks to know that it's not just theory and movement as we see in the digital space. It's actually buildings and housing and farm and a supermarket. So I wanted you to talk.
Supermarket not yet open. We're
Not yet,
working.
but it will be.
The
Yeah.
structure is there, but this is one of the challenges. Just to chime in, one of the challenges is to what we've been dealing with is making sure we have the adequate skill of folks who know how to run an operation like a grocery store, which is easier
Right.
said than done. And so, we've taken on the task the last couple of years of trying to recruit people to come in and work. And we are now shifting that up. It may take a little bit more time, but doing it right is more important than doing it quickly. And so, what we're honing in on now is a strategy of trying to take two of our young people primarily in their 20s and 30s, which is strategic because we're trying to get somebody who's going to help anchor this project for about 10 to 20 years of kind of a life contribution. But we're looking to perhaps send them to, the Detroit People's Cooperative that Baba Malik and some other of our forces started up there, which took them about at least 10 good years to develop, but they're up and running and doing well. We want to send our folks, to get some training and develop some skill, so they can bring that back home rather than just, trying to bring in somebody. Um, and the challenge, just to be frank, so folks know, because we always try to share lessons. It's not like we can't find Black folks who got the skill. Just given the thin margins by which we operate by, we can't afford some of what people are asking for. And that's not a disc on what people are asking for, because folks should be justly compensated. But right now, for our nonprofit to be able to subsidize somebody making $150,000 to $200,000 a year, which is kind of your going market rate for this type of managerial skill, that's a bit of a challenge for us. So we are trying to develop that skill, and then work our way up to that type of level of distributed income, that will be earned from the particular design that we are trying to employ. And we're not trying to just do a regular, grocery store. Just so folks know, a good chunk of what we want to do, and which is why the skill is so important, is to have one particular, perhaps even half, by design, of our grocery store being an organic, kind of what you call it, walk-in store where you could pick, some fruits, from hydroponic, aquaponic system, and then the backyard plot where we want to grow fruits and vegetables, but and then also have in the most sustainable way possible, fresh trout, catfish, lobsters, shrimp, and crawfish.
Which makes sense living on the Gulf Coast, and yeah.
So
Can
yeah,
you,
so it's a work in progress. We made a lot of progress, but we still got some ways to go on that.
yeah, and can you share what it means to have a solid economic? Why am I mixing up the word? Solidarity.
Solidarity economy, solidarity
Sorry,
economics.
yeah. Can
There
you
you
can
go.
you break that down for folks who might not have heard that term?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, it is trying to build an economy, a means of exchange, so whereby we get our material and, to degree, some part of our social needs met, where the social connection and meeting people's needs is primary, not profit, right? And that is where the solidarity component comes in, because you want to build a system wherein, we can exchange, where your needs get adequately met and my needs get adequately met and our neighbors and community needs get adequately met. And if there's any surplus, it is distributed, to the broad community for its overall improvement and betterment, rather than, say me or you starting a business, hoarding most of the profit, paying our workers, minimum wage or worse, and then just hoarding all of that wealth, not reinvesting in the community or the its productive relationships, and just taking that out and then using it for lavish or excess things, which describes a dimension of the system we have now, which is the capitalist system. So
Right.
this is us trying to build something that meets human needs, but is based upon a set of coherent practices, which try to, horizontal, make horizontal as much as our relationships, and have them democratically managed to the greatest extent possible, and have the income distributed as much as horizontally as possible, so that we can meet our respective needs collectively. So that's what it means. The solidarity is the most operable, component of it, which has both some material and a political, but also a moral component to it that we're trying to build into what we're doing.
Yeah, and it stays within the community, but it also grows it. I'm
Right.
reading this book called The Gentrification of Life, where it talks about particularly Americans. If they come from a poor background, working class, and they achieve what capitalists would consider the next middle class, and then higher middle class, but that the more that people buy, the unhappier they get. And because here in the United States, that's what we're like, buy everything, buy, even if it's like at the dollar store, buy it, don't reuse plastic, or you shouldn't be using plastic anyway. But that increasingly is making people depressed, like things, and it can be overwhelming. I mean, I know for me particularly, like I have a lot of stuff, like especially archives and a lot of books. And I just recently was like, it's too much stuff. Like I can give half of these books to a school or community center,
Right.
get
Right.
rid of things and take them to the houseless shelter, and as I've been doing it, I do feel a little like lighter. And I think the more you do it, the more you're like, well, I don't need this. Um, so, folks, if this is what I'm telling people to watch on YouTube. So this is Instagram Live, because if you go on YouTube, you can actually ask us questions. We're trying to figure out how we'll be on YouTube more and more, and off kind of the Instagram, Facebook. But in fact, one of our comrades is on, Hiram Cliveta is on right now. So thank you. If you don't know Hiram's work, check out the work. He's based in Philadelphia and does incredible work against mass incarceration. Okay, so the world, because you travel a lot, the world, but
Well,
I,
it's not just travel. I'm a committed internationalist.
yeah,
We
no, I
say
know
that
that. I'm
very much
sorry.
so.
Yes, it's not just
Yeah.
like traveling for fun. And, you were saying that a lot of times you go throughout the world. you're sharing ideas, but you're getting ideas. You are connecting and you're learning a lot. So I Lebanon, the Middle East, but particularly like, why is this breaking out in Lebanon right now? Or why is Israel bombing Lebanon, right? And I think when people saw those attacks in the pagers and walkie talkies, were like, how did they get that? And how is that possible? And now people are saying that people in Lebanon are fearing being around anything that's electronic because of the killings, but a lot of maiming of people because they were holding the pagers or like the
Right.
walkie talkies, right? So we see that footage, but why is this happening now?
Um, to be clear and to be frank, it's happening now because Benjamin Netanyahu is trying to alter the outcome of the U.S. elections. He would prefer
Mm.
to have Donald Trump in office than Biden or Harris in particular. He's never made any real secret of that, and this is not new. I mean, if you go back and look at how he had a total disdain for the Obama Harris administration, and
Obama,
came
Biden,
uh, came
Obama.
and did things that
Yeah.
were complete against protocol during that administration. Um, and he represents a right wing, ultra right wing political tendency, um, which is willing to employ uh, on a basic level of international engagement,
Oh, Kali froze. It might undo it in its own. Let me
see that.
send them. Oh, it froze a little bit. Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, I think we're back.
Yep.
But fundamentally, um, you know, Netanyahu and the forces that he represents are fascist forces. They've always been that. Now they haven't always had political license to kind of do what they want, just given the constraints of the international system. But right now, they got carte blanche to do what they want. And I want folks to be very clear. Um, the trend of Zionism that he represents has never considered the present borders
Mm.
of the state of Israel, the Zionist settler colonial state of Israel, to be their final borders. And they view parts of all of Lebanon, all of Palestine, a significant part of Syria, and what will now be part of Iraq as part of their greater Israeli
Mm.
Israel project. And so I want people to be clear that that is ultimately what Netanyahu has in mind. Now, the present subtext of what he's doing is he figures that number one, he's sufficiently weak in Hamas, although they haven't by any stretch of the imagination been defeated, but their capacity has definitely been limited. So he feels that he can kind of hop, skip, and jump and create more space and take out what is called the axis of resistance, which is an alliance of forces, in Southwest Asia that comprises, Ansar Allah, also known as the Houthis, Hamas, Hezbollah, uh, several forces in Syria, several forces in Iraq, and Iran. The only kind of official kind of nation state partner, if you would, in that particular axis. But most of these are, autonomous people's movements. Most, but not all, are Shia in their particular orientation towards the Islamic uh, religion and worldview. And he's trying to take them out one by one, understanding that the United States is going to give him complete, him and the Zionist forces, complete immunity. And that immunity basically is enforced by the full might of the U.S. military, which right now, the actors of resistance does not want to, let's be frank, does not want to get into a full frontal confrontation with, right? They just think, I think, I'm not a part of it, but there's somebody who studies these issues, and, as a student of military history, they know it will be totally asymmetrical warfare. And so they're playing the long game with being an axis of resistance and trying to, you know, uh, um, apply as much pressure to both the Zionist, entity, but also the forces of U.S. Imperialism and the forces of NATO, which are allied force, basically under the domination and purview of the United States um, military apparatus and this kind of global hegemony. Uh, but he's got, Biden, if you want to put it, subjectively, Biden overcommitted, very early on to Netanyahu, and agreeing with this overall, totally unrealistic objective of eliminating Hamas. Which, if you even look at most of the Israeli intelligence and military sources, they were saying from the beginning that fundamentally it's a political ideology, and as an ideology cannot and likely will not be destroyed. And if anything, the course of the last year is probably strengthened it even more. And the fact that they have held out this long, probably to another generation, I would argue, is probably only cemented in their minds that if they are going to ultimately win and be free, that they're going to have to find even more concerted ways to fight back and ultimately defeat the Zionist entity and its allies. So, but right now, this Lebanon in particular piece uh, is maximum applied pressure to achieve a political outcome. Now they'll tell you on the TV that what he's trying to do, or what the military is trying to do, is bring the Israelis back up into the northern part of Israel. Don't fall for that. I mean, that's a subtext, but don't fall for that at all. Uh, uh, the long term political objectives of eliminating Hamas and conquering more territory. That is the overall aim. And right now, he just thinks with, basically, America on deck, the United States on deck to do whatever he wants him to do, and to kind of catch him in the bind where, the Democrats, they're kind of damned if they do and damned if they don't. And what I mean by that, like if they cut support for him, the Zionist lobby and their allied forces in the United States, that would definitely tilt the election towards Trump without question. But they're also now in a bind that if they overcommit, at least verbally, they may lose at the very least Michigan and Pennsylvania, where there are large concentrations of both Muslim Arabs people and a good number of black people, we should say, who are very clear they're going to vote against genocide. And so this is very much for grabs. But Netanyahu being, a very skilled politician, someone who understands the United States and how to play it very well, he is exploiting this situation to the hilt to get exactly what he wants. Now, a deeper part of this, you know, um, if I may just talk about some of the lessons of here, that piece with the pagers and the walkie talkies.
Yeah.
There's a lot of lessons to be learned there. One, I hope everybody understands that the reason why it is imperative to not to depend upon your enemies, for your basic means of survival, communication, food, etc. This should be a glaring example as to why that is a no-no. To the greatest extent that you can. But what it hints at is, the full degree of complicity that a number of states have with the United States and the Zionist, regime, and executing this. Because by all trails, if you look at it, just the nature of how globalization basically works, international capital, and this distributed production cycle that they have. Some parts were made in Taiwan, or for a company that was initially, or the pages in particular, that was based in Taiwan. Part of the production apparently took place in Hungary, and then at some point it sounds like they actually interceded at a port, seized the shipment, and then went in and placed little explosives in each and one a single one of these pagers and walkie-talkies.
And
Uh,
yeah, that's what I think. Because when I saw it, I was like, "This is like a movie. Like they're made in Taiwan."
oh, it was. Look, I mean, I hate
It's
to
like,
go violence, but it was a hell of an operation. But what
yeah,
people need to understand, the nature of the international compliance that took place in the agreement. So don't just think that this was just the Israelis. Nah, this was the United States played a hand. You best believe the EU countries played a hand. Taiwan, which is basically, a vassal project of the United States, they played a hand. And also, I would imagine, some of the Arab regimes also played a hand in at least turning a blind eye to this operation, which involved massive surveillance, so that they underscored the detail about which they have clearly infiltrated Hezbollah's communications network to know that this order had went in. But we can see the extent to which there's an international dimension to this. Um, by when the Israelis and their allies, you know, uh, uh, committed an egregious act of terrorism, which has totally been downplayed, which was the assassination of Hania in Tehran, in Iran, right? When he was there, in part as part of negotiations trying to get a ceasefire, and he was the chief negotiator for Hamas, and they just straight up took him out. So that lets you know what they was really thinking about peace. That
right.
was
There was
not,
no, yeah,
was
they don't want
that
that.
wasn't on the agenda, right? All the rest of that was just the rule. So yeah, this is about changing outcomes and ensuring outcomes. That's what this whole piece around Lebanon really is about, and I hope people are very clear about where you stand, and in this case, you got to stand with the sovereignty and self determination of the Lebanese people and their right to resist, just as you got to stand in solidarity with the Palestinians. I think unequivocally, and their right to resist by any means they deem necessary, to expel their colonizers and attain self determination and sovereignty.
So having Trump makes it worse, but around the Palestinian people in Gaza, like, is this ever going to end? I mean, how does something like this end, as we're seeing these numbers of, more than
Repeat
probably,
again, Rosa. My signal went weak for a minute. Let me turn
yeah,
some things off.
you can still hear me, right? Can you still hear me? Okay, so I think Holly is frozen right now, but I want to. Okay, can you hear me now? No, and it drops, so he'll be back. Okay, it'll drop and he'll be back. But I really want to know about that. Is this ever going to end? I mean, I think a lot of us are like, no, because they've made it very clear that it's a genocide, it's ethnic cleansing, it's annihilation of the people. And there was some updates at this through the Portal conference that I was at, in Chicago, from Palestine. And there was someone talking about like climate catastrophe and well, climate catastrophe in general, but also what they were saying is the amount of rubble that's in in Gaza, right? It could just even take that 15 years to clean up, and then we know they've destroyed most houses, most um, I'm sorry, most hospitals, most schools, and the brother that was given a report said it's now an open air prison of just continual fear, and that it's even like there's a part of warfare that's psychological. And one of the people giving a update about what was happening in Lebanon was like, well, that's also psychological too, because now everybody is afraid. So in Lebanon, everybody's afraid. Anything around electronics, that there's massive amount of fear. That's psychological warfare. And then what's happening to the Palestinian people, that's also psychological warfare. But that they also wanted to uplift, that they believe the numbers are much more than we're being told about Palestinians that have been killed. And then lastly, he was saying, when people live, they've lost an arm, they've lost a limb, their body has been attacked, even though if that person's still living, that you're going to have an entire generation of young Palestinians that are going into adulthood and have already, been, well, the goal I'm sure was to kill, but are maimed for life. And what does that also do, around psychological warfare and when people start to give up? But I also, what Kali was saying also is there is resistance. It's not just these particularly two countries on their own. There's forces all around the world that are, as Kali said, about acts of resistance. Okay, he's back. Let me add him on. Hey, you're back. So I was just talking about the
Sorry about that, y'all.
No,
I'm doing fatherly duties, so I'm on the road rather than being somewhere situated.
No, it's good.
Doing this interview.
Around Palestine, the people. I was just saying that many reports are indicating that the death toll is much higher. There's so many people that have not been
Absolutely.
identified under the rubble, and then you have, now an entire 1 or 2 generations that have been maimed. They've lost a limb. There's no hospitals. There's nowhere safe to go. And how does, there was a brother on that was reporting from Palestine while we were at the conference, but how does this conflict end? I don't mean simply like then one day the IDF is like, okay, it's a wrap, it's over. What's the long-term implications then of 1, 2 generations? And if Trump comes in or Harris, are they going to act any different? Well, especially Harris, towards the policies, or they're just going to be like, go. Like if Harris wins, is she ever going to do anything to stop this? Will she ever stop funding them at this moment? And Trump will just give them money, right? So more.
Well, I think that we need to be mindful that there will be different tactics employed, by Harris or Trump relative to this particular situation. But I would stress that we need to be clear on what they unify on, right? And what they unify on is that Israel is going to remain, their garrison state in the region, and all other interests in that particular region are going to be subordinate to that. Point blank. They have lockstep unity on that. Now, to what degree are they willing, to escalate to a broader international war? That one you would have to say Trump is more likely to tip the scales in favor of what Netanyahu and the fascist forces in Israel want to do, and that is to just have a full frontal war, in particular with Iran. And if they could eliminate Iran or affect regime change through military confrontation and install a puppet government in that particular state, I think Trump would back that. You know, and more than likely, other forces would as well. The Saudis, some of the other emirate states, basically the reactionary monarchies, they would probably all align with that against Iran. Um, but to do that, definitely then brings in the question of a wider international war with both China and Russia, and can
Right.
call
Yeah.
for Iran to be removed from the table. Because that would have a kind of cascading domino effect that could have some ripples upon them, particularly Russia. Which I think I would offer from what's keeping up with it. Russia is far more dependent on arms manufacturing from Iran. For its ongoing conflicts with NATO in the Ukraine, and that's how I would hope people understand that to be. Now if conversely, if Trump gets elected, he's probably going to negotiate, uh, um, a settlement with Russia, pretty much getting what it wants out of the Ukraine, and then kind of a partial retreat on NATO, and just force NATO basically to pay rent, which he threatened the last time and didn't do. But I
Yeah.
think now he's more clear on what he wants to do. But I mean, let's be clear. I mean, folks may not like me saying this or may disagree. And that's fine. I think we need to try to approach this as folks trying to be in solidarity and act in solidarity, with our comrades in Palestine. There's a level of honesty that we got to ultimately engage. And I think Israel's made the terms clear, and the United States have made the terms clear long before this. I think this is just, if anybody had any doubt about what the outcome of the Oslo Accords, were, we should have made it crystal clear. And let me make that abundantly clear. It's either two outcomes: either Israel falls and destroyed,
Hmm.
or Palestine is wiped off the map, right? And its people are pressed into total submission. Either in Jordan or being dispersed in other states. Like that is where this is headed. And I think what Netanyahu fundamentally has accomplished. He's the two-state solution that's gone. It's been
It-
gone
yeah,
for
that's done. Yeah.
but they're gonna keep propping it up. Even China and Russia still propping it up. Primarily as a political ploy, I would argue. But that's fundamentally gone, right? The
So
material,
yeah, it's just continual escalation and war.
and so it's either a one state, but he's eliminated any political pretext for one state solution, right? And
Hmm.
clearly, um, this empire would have to change. The continental U.S. empire would have to change for that to become a reality. And so in truth, me and you and our forces, if we're serious about aiding our folks, we got to get our act together, to hasten the fall of this joint and its grip on the world, and that is in everybody's collective interest, right? But there's a particular role, both in the short term and the long term, that we have to play in a brought into a real, genuine joint struggle, premise international struggle that we're going to have to engage in the more immediate sense. We're going to have to figure out how to make an actual, I think, level of intervention in the supply and manufacture of weapons that are sent over to this project. You
Yeah.
got to have a mass movement. You can't do this ultimately with small little actions here or there. Those are important. Don't get me wrong. To building people's courage, building people's capacity, building people's political will and resolve. But we're going to have to convince the millions of people that have been out in the streets over the past years that we got to step it up and we got to get into more direct intervention. And we got examples of that in our history.
Yeah.
Uh, let's look at the movement against, the School of the Americas that put pressure, against the Contras in the struggle the reactionary struggle the United States was waging, against Nicaragua, Honduras, and El Salvador, the peoples of El Salvador, and the mass movement that was waged against that. There's other ones I can cite, but we have some history, but it's gonna be with some sacrifice. And I think that part we need to be clear, but also speak clear about, so we build the political muscles and clarity and analysis on how to engage that. And what do I mean by that? Like, they are very clearly going to criminalize anybody doing that level of kind of direct action. They already headed that way. You can see that with Cop City. You can see that with the proliferation of Cop City.
Yeah, and Cop City folks, they're trying to build even more of them, but specifically, just Google Cop City, see what they're doing in Atlanta, because other states are fighting now to do it as well, even here in New York. So, Kali, with this election, right? The analysis. I mean, so for people like us that are we watch this, and the electoral political project, I mean, in my opinion, that's on its last legs as well. But what's the analysis right now, since we're seeing polls putting them in dead heat? We're seeing that the uncommitted movement is not endorsing either one. As well, they're not endorsing Green Party, third party people. Then we're seeing already that if
Brandon
Trump wins,
Harris.
yeah, if Trump wins, right, it's because the Green Party, which that's not really how elections work. They're focusing on a number of states for a reason, but also what they've been doing right now at the board of elections, and who's running those board of elections, and how they want to do hand counts now, right? They're out here, particularly the Republican Party, many of them have a stronghold in board of elections for a state. They want to change things right now so they can already potentially try to, as they say, stop the steal a second time. But you know what is the analysis right now? Because it does seem, and everything that is also polling on what people's issues are, number one and two are inflation and immigration. And if you really look at the Republican Party and what they're doing around immigration, they are just that kind of, if you don't stop it now, they're going to come to your community, they're going to rape you, and they're going to kill your kid, and all the fear mongering. But what is your analysis at this moment about the U.S. Election that's less than 6 weeks away?
Well, look, I've been saying for, you know me, our conversation. I've been telling you for the last 2 years Trump was going to win. Uh, I
So you
still
still think
think
he's going to win?
I still think he's going to win. Now, I think, if Biden was in the race, he was going to win by a landslide.
Wait, Biden would have won by a landslide?
No, Trump would have won by
Oh,
a
Trump by
landslide.
landslide. I was like, what?
Yeah, Trump would have won that by a landslide. The ruling class forces behind the Democratic Party, they pulled a master stroke of trying to make it a serious race with putting Kamala in the race. They've definitely changed their forces. I think I would be lying to you if I didn't say it was kind of a toss up. This could go either way. I'm still saying that primarily based upon inflation, that I
Right.
still think Trump is going to win. At the end of the day, because they did a whole shucking and jiving joy piece and trying to lead with positivity and all this other kind of stuff. Meanwhile, they're the party that's actually committing a genocide. And other than the status quo, they really have not offered much, to folks. And if you look at the core constituency of their coalition, Arabs and Muslims they've alienated. This being the
Right.
Democrats on clear.
Yeah.
Aliens and Muslims they've alienated. A good number of youth they've alienated on the question of genocide. All throughout the country, and the way in which they brutally, and this was in liberal institutions heavily tied to the Democratic Party, a good number of Democratic controlled cities and states, where they brought the hammer down in the spring and then basically closed off any democratic expression and protest. Now that we hear in the beginning of the year, so blatantly undemocratic pieces. They've silenced political speech by what they did with the Huru 3 case. They offered nothing in regards to how you really going to deal with the police terror rain against black people, and Latinos, indigenous people. They have basically adopted the far right strategy around immigration and only promise more deportations. And it's not like core sections, particularly of the Latino community, forgot that Biden was part of the deporter in chief Obama regime. Like
Yeah.
it's not like people's memories are that short. So they are falling short on offering a lot to core elements of their constituency. And just saying that, you got to fear Trump more than anything else and give me a blank check to then kind of selectively apply repression again, like what they're doing with cop cities or what they're telling us they would do around immigration. Like that's not enough, I think, at the end of the day, for them to like comfortably carry water to the finish line to say that Harris is going to win. Now, if Trump had a little bit more discipline, I think he'd be ahead in the polls. To be honest with you, like if he out there, if he wasn't talking about 100% tariffs on folks for leaving, the dollar denomination as the means of currency exchange, and then promising 100% tariffs on some basic goods. I think Wall Street would be a little bit more favorable, pour a little bit more money into his pocket. And with that, he definitely have more airtime and coverage. His base is pretty consolidated, but a lot of folks in this country, look, we need to be real that the vast majority of people in the United States, they don't give a damn about international issues. That ain't what they're gonna vote around.
Yeah.
That is
Absolutely.
that is a particular segment. It's a strategic segment that is going to hurt the Democrats far more or threaten the Democrats' road to victory than it would, the Republicans. His folks is locked in. So, they gonna have to really figure out how to turn up, and make some concrete promises. But this is why I don't think they're gonna win because they can't. They done push themselves in a place. If you just look at Palestine, they had to come out and admit ceasefire is not even. We're not even really pushing
Yep.
for that anymore,
And gave
right?
him $20
I got
billion
nothing
dollars
really to
last
offer.
week again.
Right, I got nothing really to offer you at this point other than Trump would be worse, and I don't
Right.
think that's sufficient. And we see that, because I think, uncommitted finally having to move in that direction, was I think a critical indicator of folks just saying, okay, I can't keep playing games with y'all, and genocide, should not be excused. But you can go that down the list issue, because what's being asked by this lesser of two evil orientation that, we got to be selective about who we throw under the bus, right?
Mm.
And I thought it was very strategic. It was racist as all hell, that Trump and Vance came out and pull out, the Haitians are eating dogs and cats, but he knew he was playing on some deep fears and anxiety, that exists around how all people in the United States have been socialized, around race and particularly the blackest of black, which was how Haiti is perceived.
Right.
Unfortunately, it's a lot of black people, in the United States who buy into that madness, and then you add onto that, that the whole anti-immigrant and Haitians or Dominicans or Mexicans or whoever are taking quote unquote my job. We just haven't done a good enough job to really educate people around capitalism, how and imperialism, how they really work, right? And that the system is going to exploit all those who can be exploited to the maximum.
Mm.
And it ain't your job. So unless there is no such thing as your job, capital don't owe nothing to you other than exploitation. So, that's all it ultimately promises at the end of the day. They're not gonna make good on anything else, right? So,
I mean, they can't explain the
but I
policy.
think if you put your money on it, Rosa, I think Trump is gonna win. But let me say this before you go
Yeah.
to your next question. Regardless of which one of them win, and
Which,
let's be real, it's gonna be one of the two. Uh, it's going to be violence either way,
Hmm.
right? And we need to start getting prepared for that, and we are insufficiently prepared for it. And
So
I'm
what
talking
does
about
that look
people in the
like?
audience and the left, huh?
What does that look like preparing in the community you geographically are? What does that look like?
I'm pausing and I'm sighing. Part of that is some anger.
Hmm.
Because I feel like the boy who's been crying wolf for a minute. 4 years ago, I was trying to put out some pieces saying that a moment like this was coming and we need to get prepared and offer some solutions. It's too late for some of that now. But the basic thing is, if nothing else, start a contact tree of folks that you can trust, that y'all can come up with some plans to mobilize together, either for direct aid and mutual aid, or for
Hmm.
mutual self-defense, or to get out of Dodge. Just to be real with folks,
And
getting
to
your
me, what you're saying,
way.
that's something concretely that people should do. I think also people who have witnessed, these disasters, like do not depend on your cell phone, fam. Like Kali's saying, write the numbers down. Who knows if they can shut down,
Oh, they can. No,
all
no,
the
there's no
social
who
media.
knows.
Yeah, go
We
ahead.
know from protests going all the way back to the June of 6 that they can shut down cell phone communication
Yeah,
instantaneously. They can,
very
if they ain't
quickly.
learned nothing from the struggles in Egypt
Ferguson and
or
Ferguson.
all over the
Yeah,
world, they can cut off the internet. These are their tools. They're not our tools. And we should not expect these things to work when push comes to shove for them to protect their interests. So we're going to have to go back to as many old school communications. That's why I put out that 10-mile radius, because
yeah,
that is something that you can walk or you can bike,
yep.
you can drive, and it's immediate, right? So we was trying to lay this thing out in the most practical terms that rely on our actual autonomous capacity, right? And not on the master's tools, which at the end of the day, the master can control or can manipulate.
And so as we wrap up, because I'm glad you also talked about the effects of a United States election, and but also the increasing right wing countries, or all over the world, and like even in Puerto Rico right now, um they're the people who are ahead right now are the right wing white statehood people. Even though Puerto Rico, since Hurricane Maria, has had like a political new consciousness, and we're seeing young people do incredible things. We're seeing growing on our food and all that, but we're also still a colony of the United States. And for people are scared, of them potentially winning. And there has been some apathy, as young people there are saying, like, we don't even trust any of this. So as we close out, and let me share two books with everybody. The first one is Jackson Rising: The Struggle for Economic Democracy and Black Self Determination in Jackson, Mississippi. And the second one, and I'll lift them up in a second, Jackson Rising: Redo: Lessons on Building the Future and the Present, which I love. I mean, I love both of them. I'm a historian, and why is that in my frame? So, yeah, fam, get this one. You'll finish it fast. But this one gives you a really dope analysis of in historical, but also around people's assembly movements and international solidarity. So, Kali, before I let you go, around climate catastrophe, because it is Climate Week, and at the UN as well, leaders, and we've seen a lot of protests today. I mean, I think people are amping it up here in the United States, but we're seeing some really innovative ways to protest. But climate catastrophe, within what's happening this week around climate action and resistance against those that are continuing to destroy our planet. And remember that Harris was banning fracking, and now she's all back in for fracking.
Well, we're gonna have to come back and do a particular piece on
Oh, we'll do that
climate
this
change,
week.
a series of them.
We will do that.
But look, I mean, everything that we talked about do not disconnect from climate change. We are in an intensified period where all of these political conflicts are being intensified by how capital is being, cut short of being able to reproduce itself in the way that it wants for profit maximization, because it's running to ecological limits, like in the here and now, and that is, creating more of an intensified conflict and rivalry around who's going to control what resources remain, right? And so it's not like Israel is just, trying to, gain more territory for biblical reasons or whatever narrative that they lie to people about. Israel has a serious water problem. The whole
Mm,
region has a serious water problem, right? And who's going to control those strategic assets? And water is life. So,
right.
who's going to control that? And if you don't believe me, look at how they already managing water and cutting off, water resources to the Palestinians long before October 7th. To the degree, particularly in Gaza, rationing, how much water and what the caloric intake of folks. That's not just punishment, which it is, but it is a particular way of how do you start planning on aggregating, who benefits from the extreme resource management necessitated by climate change. And this has been aggravated by what they clearly saw coming from the so-called Arab Spring, which we at least we forget a large part of the impetus of that was how drought forced wheat prices to raise, and the
Mm,
drought being caused by climate change, and how that began to topple, regime after regime, or at least, force mass uprising to change them. So the political impact of all of this is here now, and for another conversation, a deeper conversation, part of what I've been arguing, for is that we need to understand that what the capitalist and imperialist system necessitates for its own survival and reproduction are fascist relations of production and social control. So the system needs this. That's why you're seeing this from Hungary to, this rise in Germany to Argentina to, India. This is not by accident. It's not by accident that it's coming to the United States and it's playing itself out. So we're gonna have to do a much deeper dive on how do we, fight against climate change, create the regenerative future that we need, and totally undo, the capitalist relations of production, which underscore all this and brought us to this point of extinction. That's a deeper conversation that we have. So I applaud all those, who at Climate Week up there trying to make it happen, but it's up to us to make, the concrete links, both theoretically but politically and practically, and to try to put in practice, all those different things so that we can have, local, grounded, autonomous, projects that have the ability to create solutions on the ground that we can kind of expand and escalate based upon concrete practices, through a process of federation is what we would argue on how we are trying to approach this from Cooperation Jackson.
So I'm Kali Akuno, co-founder, co-executive director of Cooperation Jackson. Um, yeah, we will be having those conversations. And folks, so you know, we will every week highlight what or highlight someone or bring them on from Cooperation Jackson as well. And I want to remind everybody that there'll be a special edition of Disrupted Chaos tomorrow, 7 p.m. All the socials the same, where I will be interviewing Green Party candidate Dr. Joe Stein and Butch Ware. And I thank y'all for your time. Thank you for rocking with us. We will see you soon, Kali. Love you, comrade. Thank you to everybody and the family. Thank you for being on tonight.
Right on. Love you too. Appreciate everybody for tuning in, and catch you soon.
All right.